Coming up on the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast, a guest from New Zealand reaches out to talk about how sarcoidosis attacked her heart.
I ended up with 8 paramedics in my bedroom, which is always fun.
Wow.
On a regular Monday evening.
Mariza Löb talks about how her life has changed since sarcoidosis showed up.
I didn't break anything, luckily. I did have a few good x-rays at the hospital for them to check everything over. So,
wow.
This is the Sarc Fighter podcast, living with sarcoidosis and other rare diseases. Here's your host, John Carlin.
Hello, this is episode 127 of the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast. I'm your host, John Carlin. Of course, as I tell you, I do this podcast to help you understand what's going on with you and to talk to a lot of people in the sarcoidosis community. So hopefully that gives you a sense of hope as you deal with this unpredictable disease. It's called the snowflake disease because no two snowflakes are alike. And it appears that no two cases of sarcoidosis are alike. It can show up so many places in a person's body, oftentimes more than one place. And sometimes it goes away by itself, sometimes it doesn't. The treatment for sarcoidosis is all over the place, and it always starts with prednisone, which is kind of a discussion in and of itself. And so, you know, what really helps is to see how other people are coping and to see what they're dealing with. You know, I mean, you never know if it's getting worse or if the medication that you're taking is going to work or maybe continue to work. If you're on prednisone, as I said, usually there are side effects and you want to get off the medication and you're not yourself anymore. You tend to be irritable, tend to gain weight, especially in your face, that thing called moon face, and that's just disturbing all by itself. So many questions, and sometimes you just want to see how other people are handling it, how they're dealing with it, and a lot of them are. And it's good to know that folks are, yes, like Mariza, who we'll talk to today, you know, she's got a pretty severe case, and yet she is going on with her life. She's living her life. She's working. She's raising a child. And so Mariza will be joining me today to talk about how she's been forced to rearrange her life, for sure, as a cardiac sarcoidosis patient. But she's doing it, and she actually told me that she's a regular podcast listener. She found help and hope from the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast, and so she reached out saying she wanted to be on the show, and we're really looking forward to hearing what she has to say. So we'll get to Mariza here in just a couple of minutes. In the meantime, it is Thanksgiving week 2024, and by the time you hear this, Thanksgiving will have passed, but I'm recording a couple of days ahead. And I'm just thankful that things have slowed down a little bit for me for a few days. That's very nice. I'm here in the office. I'm playing with the fish tanks. I just ordered some new fish online and already an expensive pair of fish. I ordered a male and female called apistogrammas, which is kind of out there if you're not in the aquarium hobby. But they're laying eggs in a cave in a piece of driftwood, and they've only been in the tank for less than a week. So that means that, you know, my water is just right, and they're very happy. And it'd be great to see if some of the babies hatch and maybe survive. I've been watching videos on how to raise them, but I'm not really set up for it. Usually, if you're going to raise aquarium fish, you have an aquarium set up just for that breeding pair of fish. And then you do all kinds of things, special foods and so forth and so on, to feed the babies once they become free swimming. When they're first born, if you've seen this like on the Nature Channel or something, they're called wigglers, and they're just these little, they've got a yolk sac attached to them, and they just sit on the bottom, they wiggle, and they feed off the yolk sac, and then after a while they become free swimming, and that's when you can feed them food. But this is all happening right now in an aquarium with lots of other fish. So, it's very unlikely that even if these babies hatch, which doesn't always happen, even if the babies hatch, the parents will have to protect them from the other fish for a long time. And everything is so dense. You might say, well, take the other fish out or take the babies out. But this is a heavily planted tank, and there's really no way to get to them and move them to another aquarium safely. So we'll see. We'll see, but it's kind of fun to order these fish, and they come in, and you're taking them out of. They've been overnight shipped, and in this case, all the way from Wyoming, and they arrive in Virginia, and they've been in a bag of water for 24 to 48 hours, and you put them in the fish tank, and you do all these things to acclimate them to the new water in the fish tank. And I've had a lot of experience to try to do it just right. And then when it works and they're happy and they're eating right away, you say, wow. And then when they start laying eggs, that means they're really happy. So that makes me happy, right? And I've got a couple of days here to work on the aquariums and clean them up, and it's just nice to see that everything is working. So, because it doesn't always, I just got to tell you that. But it is late November. The cold fronts are sweeping across Virginia. That's pretty much the end of our seasonable weather here. Most of the leaves are off the trees now. But it did get up got up to 60, 64 maybe yesterday at the peak of the day. And when I got out on my bike, temperature had already started to drop closer to sunset. So it was a little chilly, but it was nice, and the wind had stopped blowing for a little while. And so I got in a bike ride on a Sunday afternoon. And then Mary and I took 3 of the grandkids to the playground earlier in the day. Also fantastic. And it was warmer then, and they had a good time. And then coming up on Thanksgiving Day here in Roanoke, we have an event called the Drumstick Dash. Some cities call it the Turkey Trot, but basically it's a very early Thanksgiving morning 5K. And in Roanoke, about 10,000 people show up for it. I mean, it's a big deal, right? And I can tell you that I've never missed one here. I hate to break the streak, but they are calling for rain. And getting up on Thanksgiving morning, especially a chilly Thanksgiving morning, and going out and doing a 5K in the rain, man, I don't want to let the streak lapse. I think it's like 10, 15 years. I can't remember. I emceed the race for many years. Channel 10, where I work, was a longtime sponsor. And when they first started having this race, I was the one that did the TV promo. There was video of me running through downtown Roanoke saying, come out and move your feet so others can eat. That was the big tagline for it. And, we helped. I really felt like, we, the station, and I, being the spokesperson, really helped to launch this event. And then for years and years, I emceed the award ceremony afterwards, giving away the first, second, third place awards for the overall winners and in the age groups. And, so I was a part of it for a long time. But, of course, thanks to sarcoidosis, I walk the event now. I used to run them pretty aggressively and see what kind of a time I could get. Now it's just a matter of, instead of being a competitor, I'm a completer. Although I will say that most people do walk it. It's just a big event to get out, burn a little calories ahead of what's going to be a big meal day. And of course, if you're watching football, you're eating junk food, and there might be a beer or a glass of wine somewhere along the way, and all those things add up. So, and then if you have company from out of town, you're looking for something to do earlier in the day. Let's go out and do the 5K, and all the money raised from this event goes to the local rescue mission, by the way, to help feed the homeless. So it's a great cause as well. And my station stopped sponsoring the event long ago, but that doesn't matter. I still go. I just don't have the added responsibility of staying after and hosting the award ceremony, which can be kind of nice because you do get a little wet right? You sweat from running and that kind of thing. And then you're standing up there and it's usually chilly and you got to wait for the results to come in. And, so it's not so bad just to go home. I'm going to say that. But, again, because of my sarcoidosis on my spinal cord, I can't run anymore. Sometimes I can shuffle, and maybe go a little bit faster than a walk, but I wouldn't call that fun. And it's not like I'm not going to get any real sense of accomplishment from that. So I pretty much just go and walk now. But, I'll tell you, yesterday I mentioned we took the grandkids to the playground, and my 4-year-old grandson, Nick, said, "Come on, Papa, let's skip to the car." And I was like, I probably can skip. Nope. I can do the skipping motion, but I land funny, and, it's like, oh, no. Legs just don't work that way anymore. It's kind of frustrating. But, I was out there with the grandkids, and we were having fun, and I knew I was going for a bike ride in the afternoon. So there's a lot of things I really can do. I don't want to focus on what I can't do. I want to focus on what I can do. In fact, so since it is Thanksgiving time, I just want to say that I'm thankful this year because I don't want this to sound corny because I really mean it, but I have found this community through FSR and through this podcast. And I'm thankful that my medication has kept my situation from getting worse. I haven't had any flares, knock on wood, for several years now. Being a part of the sarcoidosis community, working with FSR and all the people I've interviewed on the podcast and the people who continue to say how valuable the podcast is to them, just gives me a good feeling, and it's so important. And, whenever you volunteer with a group and you're able to actually touch the subject, touch the people that you're helping. My Rotary Club years ago, every Sunday we would go to not the regular rescue mission, but another place in town called Ram House, which feeds the homeless, or I guess they're calling them the unhoused or the unsheltered population now. And you actually would give them the food, and you would see the gratitude on their face. And I always hated giving up the Sunday when I was thinking about it ahead of time. And then once you got there, it just felt so good to do it, right? And I'm involved with a number of nonprofit boards in the region, and St. Francis Service Dogs comes to mind. We raise, train, and place very, very highly trained service dogs at the very highest level that it can be done. And then when you see somebody paired up with a service dog, and you see how the dog just changes their life completely, just makes these huge wholesale changes in the way people live their lives and are able to live their lives. It just really, really makes a difference. And that's how it is with the sarcoidosis community. When you folks reach back out to me, or I talk to somebody along the way, or someone sends an email and just says, wow, as Mariza did, it really is something to be thankful for. And so I wanted to throw that out there as we approach Thanksgiving here in 2024. And I just want to alert you to something else. There's a blog that kind of goes along with that. It's written by Susan D'Agostino, who talks about learning mindfulness and a sense of quiet and solitude and how that helps her cope. And Susan has become trained to teach mindfulness, so she knows what she's talking about. And she's got a series of blogs on the FSR website. But here's an excerpt from her latest blog. It reads, "More importantly, what did silence in my training teach me? It taught me patience, stress management, resilience, and gave me peace in many times of turmoil dealing with this disease." She writes, "My training and daily practice of mindfulness and gratitude has also led me to teach others how to use these tools." And so, as I said, Susan has a series of posts about mindfulness on the FSR website, and I'll put a link to that series in the show notes, or you can just go to the FSR webpage, which is stopsarcoidosis.org, and you can find it pretty easily. So, and then just before we get to the interview, I want to share one more kind of cool personal item. Thank you for listening to this. But my favorite band in high school, and now I'm going to date myself, but we're talking about late 70s, okay? My favorite band was Kansas, and my favorite song was Carry On My Wayward Son. Hard stop. Favorite song. Dunk, 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 do, 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 do. You see what I'm saying? Well, Kansas is coming to Roanoke to do a show, and they still sell out their events. They're very popular. And last week, I interviewed Ronnie Platt, who is the lead singer for the band. Now, it was a Zoom interview. It wasn't in person. He was still in Illinois, but they were doing some press events, and I got tapped to do it for the TV station, volunteered to do it, rushed to the front, raised my hand and said, ooh, 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 pick me. But it worked. And I got to spend about a half an hour online with him in a Zoom call and had a very real conversation. And I got to tell you, I was geeking out a lot. What a great experience. It really was. And if everything works out, I'll be able to go to the show next week. So if that happens, I'll be sure to let you know all about it. But you know what else is great? Talking to someone in New Zealand, basically halfway around the world, and that's Mariza Löb, and she's a Sarc patient, and she's coming up next here on the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast.
I feel like a zombie, just feeding and stumbling.
Hi, I hope you're enjoying the Sarc Fighter podcast. You may be wondering, what can I do to help? How can I be a part of the sarcoidosis solution? It's simple. Make a donation to KISS, Kick In to Stop Sarcoidosis. 100% of the money goes to the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research. Look for a link in the show notes of the Sarc Fighter podcast. Welcome back to the FSR Sarc Fighter podcast, and joining me now is Mariza Löb, all the way from New Zealand. It's Friday where I am and Saturday morning where you are, and Mariza had to get up early this morning, but thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, John. It's great to be here.
Yeah, how are you feeling with your sarcoidosis?
I'm having a pretty good run at the moment, so I should say pretty well. I've got cardiac sarcoidosis, so it feels like every time there's a flare, it's a little bit of a drama, but really good year so far.
Good year. So, that's what we do. We look at, when you have sarcoidosis, you look at it and, it's been a good few months. It's been a good year. When you can say it's been a good couple of years, that's really great. But how did you first discover that something was wrong?
I was living a normal life, as you do pre-sarcoidosis, and I had a cardiac or a event with my heart at home. So I was just having a regular evening with my family. My son was 3 at the time, so giving him some supper, and I had this pain on my chest that just all of a sudden happened. So really dramatic. I couldn't really move. Luckily, my husband was home, so he called the paramedics, and I ended up with 8 paramedics in my bedroom, which is always fun.
Wow.
On a regular Monday evening. They had to, I ended up being in a really fast heart rhythm, and ended up at the emergency department at the hospital. So that got me a few days in hospital to figure out what was going on. In hindsight, I did have some symptoms before that as well, but being a working mom, I had just put down all the fatigue and kind of difficulty running and things like that, down to having a young child and working. And I was wondering how all the other working parents did it, to be honest. Um,
Yeah.
but so that was kind of my wake up call moment.
So I wanna unpack a couple of things you just said there. First of all, they got to the hospital. You got to the hospital. You were there for several days. Did they know it was sarcoidosis by the time you left the hospital, or did they just say, there's something wrong with your heart?
It was a surprisingly eventful. I was admitted on the Monday evening, and I was discharged on the Saturday.
Okay.
And in that time, I had a number of different tests. So I had an echo done, which checks how your heart's pumping. I also had a cardiac MRI to see if there was scarring. And from that, they then discovered that my heart wasn't in great shape. In fact, the head cardiologist of the hospital came to me and he told me that it was severely impacted, which was always great to hear. I was in complete denial, of course. So I was like, oh, yeah, we'll just fix it.
Just fix it. Yeah, I've been there. Yeah, just fix it. I'm strong. I can handle it.
Yeah.
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 But
And then
did they know it was sarcoidosis? So did they, or were they just looking for whatever was causing your heart to be acting the way it was?
they were looking, they thought it was sarcoidosis. So they did give me a ICD, which is a implantable cardiac defibrillator, so that if I did have any further heart rhythms, it would, it would save my life, basically. But I went for a PET scan 2 weeks after, and that's where they saw the inflammation and kind of confirmed the sarcoidosis from there. So it was pretty fast once it happened. Actually, in hindsight, it was there for a lot longer, but from my event, it was pretty quick.
All right. And then so you were very fortunate that they started thinking sarcoidosis that early on. Where do you know where in your heart things were going wrong, where the sarc was? Was it interrupting heart rhythms, or was it actually scarring on a valve, or where in your heart was the problem?
Yeah, so it was interrupting the electrical pathways in my heart. So it was an electrical rhythm issue. It was causing problems with the signal traveling from the top of my heart down to the bottom, which is called the ventricles. So I was having partial heart block, is what they called it. If you have complete heart block, I think you have to get a pacemaker. But for I luckily wasn't that far down the path yet. So I managed to get away with just a defibrillator.
Just the defibrillator. So is that now like in your body, the defibrillator, to shock you if you have a heart rhythm problem?
Yeah, so it will do one of two things. It'll either pace the rhythm lower by doing like little electrical pulses, or it will shock me. So ideally, I don't get to the shocking phase. It just gives me a little jolt, not a jolt, a buzz. I don't know what the right word is. Yeah.
I've talked to some people who have that because of cardiac sarcoidosis here on the podcast, and they say when you get the shock, it really hurts. Have you had to experience that yet?
I did end up having a few shocks, but I've not felt it. So when I've been going into a rhythm that's fast enough for it to need a shock, I've always kind of lost consciousness a little bit. So a little bit, she says, as if you can be a little bit unconscious. But yeah, so I've had 5 shocks. I actually ended up having 3 of them in one day, right right after I started taking prednisone for treating the sarcoidosis. So I think it was, my body was just trying to get all that inflammation out, and it was a bit chaotic, obviously, in there. So that landed me another few days in the hospital just for them to monitor me. It is really quite. I because I haven't felt the shock, that part has been fine. But I think mentally it's quite difficult to deal with shocks. Just because you don't know when it's going to happen, if it's still going to happen, if you can just carry on as normal and not worry about it.
I mean, does it stop you in your tracks? You're going about your daily business, and all of a sudden that thing goes boom. I mean, do you have to sit down? What happens?
Yeah, so I feel it's similar to when you have low blood pressure for me, where you just feel incredibly dizzy. And then by the time that you think to sit down, or you kind of wonder if you should or shouldn't sit down, you're already kind of waking up on the floor, to be honest.
Yeah.
I did, the first time it happened, I was going downstairs in our house, and ever since then, it's just been a little bit scary for me to use stairs because, I was at the top. I woke up at the bottom.
So you fell down the stairs.
Yeah, it sounds, I think everything, you tend to make light of things in hindsight, but yes, I did.
And you didn't bang your head or break your leg or anything like that falling down the stairs?
I didn't break anything, luckily. I did have a few good x-rays at the hospital for them to check everything over. So,
wow.
Yeah, I found them for one thing, and then they were like, and stairs, really? The paramedics were quite, they were quite worried.
So I want to ask some life questions then. Can you drive?
The way it works here in New Zealand is you can't drive for 6 months after you, if you lose consciousness for any reason. And the cardiologist then has to clear you as well. So it basically it's been up and down. I have had about a year where I couldn't drive at all, to just get through all the, kind of getting through all those events and having my heart stabilize. But I'm now back driving for the last year, which has been great, to be honest, especially with a young child.
Yeah. So you have one child?
Yeah, just the one. I've got a little boy who's 6 now.
6.
In primary school, and just about to go to year 2, which is very cute.
I'll bet it is. Yeah. Do you work outside the home?
Yeah, I'm a digital marketing consultant, so do quite a bit of work with different organizations around how they want to communicate with their customers, and that kind of thing.
Business to business type stuff, or is it business to consumer?
Yeah, both, mainly B2C actually,
B2C.
so business to consumer.
All right. So the work you do is the fun stuff that we see on social media and on television, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it is quite nice because you do see the impact of your work quite quickly, which is nice.
Yeah. Okay. And can you do that from home? You work remotely?
I do go into the office about 4 days a week. But yes, it's pretty flexible, because I can if I need to, I can work remotely pretty easily, which has been very useful, especially in the beginning when driving was a bit more difficult and those kind of things.
Yeah. Wow, that's tough. So I want to go back because you were talking about, in hindsight, you had the fatigue. Any other things that we now associate with sarcoidosis that might have been, like, did you have a rash of any kind? Did you have any sort of muscle spasms or anything else that were the early signs of sarcoidosis?
For me, it was mainly fatigue, and maybe some muscle weakness, I would say. Um, I also had some palpitations. Sometimes I would wake up at night and have some palpitations, which I thought was just maybe bad, like something I need to improve in my diet, or, like you prescribe things or ascribe them to different reasons when you're looking for an answer in your mind. I was I was getting home in the evenings after work. So we have a short train ride between us and the city, and um, Wellington's quite a hilly city, and it's been I would have to walk from the train station up this um, quite steep hill to get to my home, and that was proving to be quite difficult. I would have to stop multiple times and catch my breath and that kind of thing. And then when I would get home, it takes quite a lot out of you if you're not feeling your best to work 8 hours a day. So have a little lie down before I could tackle supper and those kind of things with my son. Luckily my partner is very supportive. So, but yeah, he was worried that I was getting depressed. Because like if you're having a lot of naps and things, like it looks quite similar to depression. So it can look like other things, I guess, if you don't know what it is, right? So yeah.
Wow. So you said that you did you say that you were having a hard time running? Had you been a runner, like for exercise?
I had been. I did a lot of trail running in the past, and I had let that slip away a little bit with my job for about a year or two when I was first in New Zealand. But I've had a few years where I did like 21-kilometer runs, so half marathons and longer trail runs. But it's not been something I've been able to keep going with. I actually changed jobs in 2017, I think it was. No, 2021, sorry. And that was about 6 months before my diagnosis. And I was like, right, I'm going to get back into this running business, really change things around. And I could not even run I think it was a few 100 meters. And I just thought, wow, I'm unfit, very, very unfit. But that was not, I don't think it was fitness at all. It was probably the sarcoidosis and maybe the combination of it being in my heart as well, right? Like just I just couldn't get the power going.
So what kind of medications? You mentioned prednisone. So was that the first line of defense? Do they hit you with a pretty heavy dose?
Yes. So I started off on 40 milligrams, and at one point I was up to 60 milligrams when it looked like the inflammation wasn't quite getting under control. I'm down. I've pretty much tapered down to 10 milligrams now, which is pretty manageable from a side effects and everything perspective. I'm also on methotrexate. I did have a period where we try to see if methotrexate alone, along with would kind of keep the inflammation under control, but it didn't. So I had another little flare and ended up having to take infliximab as well. So those are the three main ones that I've been on from an inflammation perspective.
Mm-hmm. What are you on right now? All three, or just the prednisone, the 10 milligrams?
Yeah, so all three. I'm getting infliximab infusion every 6 weeks at a local hospital here. And I'm also doing the 10 milligrams of prednisone, and then weekly methotrexate tablets.
You're doing the tablets. You don't have to give yourself a shot.
Yeah, I'm quite glad not. I'm not sure how
I
I
had to
would.
do that for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds freaky, to be honest to me.
Methotrexate really kind of messed with me. It made me just feel off, and I mean, not like the prednisone makes you cranky and angry and that sort of, but the methotrexate just made me feel like I had the flu. Just felt crappy all the time. And so I asked the doctor to see if we could move on. And I don't know if it was being effective or not, but the other stuff that they've figured out is now working. So anyway, not enough about me, but I know what I understand what you're
Yeah.
going through. And I think the people listening understand what you're going through. That is unfortunately the menu of drugs that we have available to us. So how is your life, your day-to-day life? You said it's been a good year. Does that mean a year without a shock? Does that mean a year without a flare? What do you mean by it's been a good year?
I guess in any year without a shock is a good year.
Right?
So I've been now about 2 years where I haven't had a shock. I have still had some arrhythmias, which has led me to either need to get like feeling that I'm getting paced by my ICD last year. So there was, if towards the end of last year, I'd still had some smaller events, not big enough for a shock, but still noticeable. And this year has been almost event free. I had a small thing in Feb, but other than that, it's been really good.
Oh, that's awesome. So you are driving again?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And how is the walk up the hill to your house from the train? Can you do that now?
I can do it, but it's not pleasant. Let me put it that way. I still, I feel like I've got really good power on the flat, but going up, like even small inclines, I still feel a little bit of weakness. Um, I, I, I don't know if that's just going to be with me forever, or if it's just something I need to push through. It's kind of one of those things where I'm sure it'll improve even more as my medications settle down.
Yeah. So have they talked to you about your prognosis long term? I mean, do they think they have it under control? Is there permanent damage that they can't fix? What are the doctors telling you?
So they don't really like to discuss prognosis, being doctors and being sarcoidosis. I think it's just such a variable disease, and everyone is different. For me, I did try to have that conversation early on, and they were quite keen to see how the prednisone impacted the inflammation. So I think with cardiac specifically, it's a bit hard for them to tell what is scarring and what is inflammation. And as the inflammation goes down, sometimes the prognosis, like you say, looks a bit better. So right now, I've gone from having, I think, 2nd-degree heart block to no heart block, which is really good. So things have improved quite a lot for me. I still have scarring remaining, but the ICD is there to protect me if I do need anything. I'm also on amiodarone now, which is an antiarrhythmic, which has been helping keep all the bad heart rhythms away. And that's something that I think all medications can cause trouble if you take it long term, right?
Right.
But that's another one of those where if you take it for a long time, it can do issues with your thyroid and all kinds of things. So I don't know if that's a forever medication or not. But I think at the moment things are all the medications are working together. So that's all I can ask, really.
So I'm curious, have you gone through a round or a bout with depression after this diagnosis and after all these things? Have you needed to see a counselor or anything?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. I have had, for the first 6 months, I would say I just try to power through as normal. There was probably a little bit of denial in that initial period where I thought, great, we're just going to get this under control. But as things go on, you kind of realize that you might be in this for the long haul with this. And I think that really is where I started to struggle with things mentally, especially because I kept having heart events as well. I did start seeing a lovely therapist who actually specializes in advising folks with medical conditions, specifically like cancer patients.
Mm-hmm.
And she has been very helpful to work with. I see her for periods, and then if I feel a bit better, then we can take a break. But I have been seeing her again for at the beginning of this year. So I think it's something very important to take care of your mental health when you're going through this. And I probably, it's something that you also can only share so much with friends and family. I think over the long term, initially I shared quite a lot with my partner, but you also don't want to kind of freak them out with every fear that you have, basically.
Right.
Yeah, so from that perspective, it's just very useful to have somebody to chat to. That's, you can just be open and honest with.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I went kicking and screaming, knowing that I needed to do it to a therapist, because I thought, not me. I'm not that person. I don't need to share my thoughts with somebody. I'm just gonna hammer through, just like you said. And I found that it helped so much. And then the more I've been involved with the sarcoidosis community, the more I realized that that's just something that most people got to do. And so would you have described yourself as a healthy, active person prior to this happening?
Yeah, definitely. I'd never been to the hospital before. I'd never seen a paramedic before. I'd never had any kind of surgery or anything like that before. And I've always been quite proud when sorry, just getting a poll reminder here. As we all do. Yeah, so I've always been quite proud of, going to the GP or going to anyone if they ask me, oh yeah, are you, is there anything going on? No, never. I've been a runner. I've been quite active in my life up to, I would say 2021. So yeah, it's been a bit of a shock to go from that to, it's quite a big change in lifestyle. I feel like the prednisone as well, like you've spoken about the moon phase of quite a bit on different podcasts, and you just don't feel like yourself, right? You look in the mirror and feel like, who is this person that you're looking at? And it takes a while to get back to feeling a bit closer to yourself again. Yeah, that's probably, it's tricky.
Yeah. New Zealand, I've never been to New Zealand. It's on my bucket list. Good friend of mine is just back from a 2-week trip there, doing all the outdoor things. And when I think of New Zealand, I just think of it as this huge playground, right? Everybody who lives there is a trail runner or a kayaker or both, or a fly fisherman or a mountain climber or an ice climber, or all these things that you would see like in Outside Magazine. Just feels like like that's what you do if you live in New Zealand. Was that anywhere near your existence, or is that just in my imagination?
No, I'm just back from a holiday with a good friend, and we went to the South Island of New Zealand. And it's just incredible scenery. We went, look, we didn't do anything extreme,
Uh-huh.
being, but yeah, we went across down to Kaikoura, which is a beautiful kind of surfing town, and you can be on the beach and then you look up and there's a mountain, like a snow-capped mountain right next to the beach, basically. Yeah, it's just unbelievable, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful lakes, beautiful. Yeah, you can pretty much, I think the Kiwis are pretty proud of inventing a lot of adventure sports, if you want to call
Do
it
do
that.
you feel like now you're left out of all that?
Um, Not really. I think my family still likes to be quite active, and I do tend to tag along, even though I don't do all the things anymore. So yeah, it's not, sometimes it is a little bit tricky. But for the most part, I think I've accepted where I am now, and yeah,
So you're
it
the quote unquote new normal, right?
yes, exactly.
People say that term is overused, but I think in the sarcoidosis community, it does. It changes your life, and you think, well, I've always done all these things. I can bowl through this, and I'll just do whatever I have to do. Like you said, well, we'll just fix it and we'll go on. And then slowly over time, you realize that maybe that doesn't happen, you know.
Yeah,
And then you've got to go through this. For me, and I still do it, you go through this period of mourning for your old life. Like you miss your old life, you want that life back, and you know, and you just can't get to it. And
yeah,
like I can't run anymore, just like you, and it drives me nuts. Um, and I loved running, I loved going out and just running slowly on the trails. And luckily I can hike, I can go out and walk the dog, but man, I just fall down almost if I try to run. My legs just don't work the way they used to, and it drives me crazy. And now I think about you, and you're living in New Zealand, where you're standing on the beach looking up at the snow-capped mountains, and I just want to be there and I want to go engage with it. And
I do have quite a few things on my bucket list of things to do, which now I wonder if I will do them. Like there's so many great hikes here, which is like overnight hikes, and you can walk on a trail into a mountain, and um there's like these little cabins that you can go overnight in and then walk back. Um, I just don't know if that's feasible for me anymore. So there is things like that where you think about it and it does make you a little bit wistful, shall we say.
yeah,
Um, but I think you also have, at least for me, I have started, we got an e-bike, which has been quite fun. And I've been, even with the hills and stuff, that's been quite achievable for me. So I really recommend that if you can. And yeah, but running, I I do think about it quite a bit, that, like it would be great to just put on some shoes and hit the road and get out there again. And it's just not that easy. I also
hmm
find that, like if I have a really good day and um I embrace it, then the next day I really pay for it. So I really do try and pace myself.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Have you tried any strength training in the gym or anything like that?
Um, We do have some weights at home, but I've never really been a gym bunny, to
Yeah,
be honest.
I get
Yeah,
it. I get it.
yeah,
Um, I have found myself, of course, people listen know that I'm a cyclist, but now that it's cold here, I'm going to the YMCA, and the amount of strength that I've lost, some of it's just because of aging, because I'm just at that age where if you don't work at it, you lose strength. But a lot of it is sarcoidosis related, and um, I'll just share this. For instance, for most of my life through my 50s, I could do 50 push-ups. And I wasn't happy with myself if I couldn't do 50 push-ups. And last night I've got a guy who gave me some workouts to do, and I had to do 3 sets of 10 push-ups. I couldn't do it. And then I tried it just from my knees, and I couldn't do it. Now, granted, this was in the middle of a workout where I was doing other things to tire my arms and my chest out. But even without that, I just realized how much strength that I have lost. And then I think, well, how is that translating into everything else that I want to do? And when you just push it in the gym, then you know about it, which makes me want to push harder. But I guess that's a long way of saying there is some merit to going in the gym because it shows you what you can't do anymore, but it also gives you an
yeah.
opportunity to try and fix it. So I was just curious if that was anything that you wanted to do or
No, but I've never been able to do 50 push-ups, so good on
uh-huh.
you.
Yeah,
So,
well, thank you. I feel I used to like, it was like I would walk around like I can do 50 push-ups, I'm this fit dude, and now now I don't have that swagger anymore, that's for sure. It put me in my place pretty quick. Pride goeth before the fall, so they say. So what would be your advice to other people that are dealing with sarcoidosis, be it cardiac or anything else, and you're just going through your life? What would your advice be?
that's actually a pretty interesting question. I mean, I think the biggest thing that has helped me is to find support of some kind. Um, to I've made and reached out on Facebook groups and found some lovely ladies who live quite close to me, and we've been catching up and even just chatting online. And it's nice to have a connection with some other folks who are going through something similar to you, um, whether it's cardiac sarcoidosis specific or another kind of sarcoidosis. It's quite an isolating condition. So that has been really important for me. And like you mentioned, finding some support, like somebody to talk to. Um, and I think other than that, the one thing I've learned is just to really listen to my body and to not write off things that you may be feeling. I've probably gone a little bit too far the other direction where now I'm very in tune and I want every little thing dealt with rather than just the big things. And I think that's also frustrating doctors, but I kind of don't care. Yeah, I think that's the big thing. What I've also found really useful is finding. I think we're quite lucky with being in the age of the internet where we can find a lot of information online, and like there's these videos, and it may not be sarcoidosis specific information, but it can help you figure out something that might be going on with you, and help take that to your doctor.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Is there anything else you want to share?
I don't think so.
I just want to thank you for reaching out and wanting to be on the podcast and being willing to share your story and helping the rising tide lifts all ships. And when other people hear what's going on with you, it just like you talking to your Facebook group, if somebody can find this podcast online and listen to this conversation, then maybe they'll be all the better for it. So thank you.
Yeah, I hope folks find it as useful to hear my story as I've found it to hear others.
I feel like a zombie, just feeding and stumbling.
So thanks so much to Mariza for joining me here on the podcast. How cool is it to be talking to somebody so far away? Maybe I'm just old school, and so many people have grown up with the internet and feeling like Europe is right around the corner. And you can jump on a plane and get there quickly, or you can you can talk to somebody online who's in a different part of the world, and maybe that's been normalized for a lot of people. But for me, it's still that kind of distance just blows my mind. And then to know that the podcast was out there and Mariza was able to listen to it and find some hope and solace from what we're talking about here on the podcast collectively, all of us, was really good. And then her story itself, listening to her talk about falling down the stairs because her heart had stopped and the defibrillator went off. I mean, that's scary stuff, and I'm glad she's okay. But to know that you're walking around with that kind of condition, but she's had, like she said, she's had a good year. She's driving again. She takes very good care, and she's very cautious. But she's making her way, and it was just great to have her on, to have her share her story. So Mariza, thank you very much. The official Sarc Fighter song is called Zombie by Mark Steyer and the White Hot Lizards in Alberta, Canada. Mark's story, the story behind the lyrics, is in episode 12. I release this podcast every other Monday. As I'm speaking today, my trusty dogs Dougal and Shandy are both curled up on the chair in my office. They make my life so much better. The backstory to the founding for the Foundation for Sarcoidosis Research is episode 11 with Andrea and Redding Wilson. They started it more than 20 years ago at their kitchen table. You can follow Sarc Fighter on social media. Just search on Facebook, on Instagram, on Peloton. I have a cycling blog called Carlin the Cyclist, and there's a section there called Cycling with Sarcoidosis. I did a recent post there as well. And if you're new here and you're trying to just figure out what sarcoidosis is, go back and listen to episode 2 with Dr. Simon Hart from the UK. And my story is episode 1. And I'm looking for guests to appear on the Sarc Fighter podcast. Please send me an email. It's in the show notes, carlinagency@gmail.com. Until next time, keep fighting.
Learn to suffer, you feel pain someday. Learn endurance, your strength will fade away. Dead man walking, trying to keep up the pace. Dead man walking,